everyone. Welcome to Talk Advocacy to Me, hosted by myself, Liz Richardson, and my co-host, Deena Zenyk from Captivate
Hey.
Collective, where we talk all things customer advocacy and marketing, impromptu discussions discussing one specific question or topic. And today we have a really exciting guest with us. We have Nick Bennett, who is the co-founder of ClubPF and host of the Anonymous Marketer podcast. And I think we'll probably hear a little bit about both of those at some point in this conversation because I think they're very tied to our conversation today. Nick, thank you so much for coming on here. It's very exciting to have you as a podcaster coming onto our podcast. Very exciting. Want to say hello to everyone out there?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is a topic that I am super passionate about, so it should be fun.
Well, it was really fun when you had some ideas about what you could talk about, and we do this one question format. So, our one question for today, which is loosely tied to customer advocacy, but a nice, fun little twist on it, is why do we suck at advocating for ourselves? And I think we'll talk about that specifically from the perspective of customer advocacy and marketing professionals. Why is this hard for us? We're always advocating for other people. We're always marketing other things. But for a lot of us, really me included, it's a very, very difficult and feels very awkward to market or advocate for yourself. So, Nick, we're really excited to have you come on here and just tell a little bit about your story. And I think to set the scene for answering this question, it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit about your story, your recent story, and why this topic is top of mind for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in today's economy, it's tough. On LinkedIn, I feel like every day you're doom scrolling on people that have been laid off, and it's like, some people, it's tough. I mean, I just had twins and I found out I was being laid off and I was like, oh man, like, what do I do now? I was at a point where I've gone through this two other times in my career and I've always turned out better on the other side. So I'm at a point where, like, hey, the world's just going to happen. I'm go with the flow. We'll figure it out. And it just kind of worked out.
That's a very positive attitude, and that's really, really, really great to hear. But today, I think it will be so great for people to hear kind of why you think that and how you think that. I think you have some real reasons to think like things do work out and things can work out better. And it's opened up a lot of opportunity for you specifically right now in your career. All right, so let's just jump into some questions to set the stage for why we suck at advocating for ourselves. But when you received notice that you were being laid off, and it's always a little shocking, I assume. I'm going to be really honest and say I haven't been laid off, but my husband has been laid off, and it is very shocking. So what are your immediate next steps?
Oh, well, first, like, it's like, did I do something wrong? You start to like self doubt yourself a little bit. Like, was my work not up to par? Do they think that it's me that sucks at what I'm doing every single day? And more than likely, it has nothing to do with the individual. It's just a business decision that has to get made. And you're just an innocent bystander in kind of the aftermath of it, especially in like today's economy, like I mentioned, where it's like VCs want their money back. It's like you gotta break even, you gotta get profitable, all these different things. And so when it happened, I was like, you know what, it's okay. What am I going to do? I'm going to actually take to LinkedIn first before anything because I've spent the last 3.5 years creating content there. And for me, I was always one that would give, 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 give. And I was like, now it's time for me to ask. And I think it's good to, you've done so many deposits that it's fine to do a withdrawal at some point because you've given so much for so long. And I did like two of them and I was blown away by like the people that were like, listen, like, what do you want to do? Let me help you. I ended up getting like 300 DMs from people wanting to help, like probably 1,000 comments from people. I mean, the two posts ended up having about 500,000 views, but between the two of them. And I was just overwhelmed by the amount of like the support from the community that was willing to go above and beyond in helping me. And that was again, that was the first thing that I did. I did call a few close people, sent a few text messages, and was like, "Hey, this happened. Don't really know what I want to do next, but like I need to talk to someone."
Intense. That's amazing. I love what you just said about you gave and you gave and you gave, and then it was finally time to ask something back. It reminds me of something Gary Vee talks about, which is jab, 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 right hook, right? You give, 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 and then you can ask for something. This is not the situation he was talking about, but that's an amazing just thought of when you've invested in your practice and you've invested in your community, you have that ability when you do actually need some support and help to ask that back of the community. And in this case, they really came through, which is amazing. Um, so you obviously went, and then how and what made it clear what your next steps should be? Because I think you did look at a couple different options for how to proceed forward.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, do I want to work for someone again? And listen, I was over the last, I worked for a company called Alice before my last company at AirMeet, and I feel like no one's safe from layoffs. At Alice, I drove $2 million of pipeline in 2 years organically through content creation on LinkedIn. 60% of that closed. Now I did leave there myself. They did lay off like 60% of the company on top of that, but I just left on my own. Now at AirMe, I was only there for 6 months, but I was able to drive probably about $3.5 million in pipeline in that short period of time through the activities that I did. And we saw so much of it close. So I don't think anyone is immune to this. Like, you could be a huge piece of the story for a company. And if you just happen to, again, like, you, more than likely you're probably expensive. I knew my cost of my salary was very expensive. Like, I'm going to be one of those people on the chopping block, but it's because I invested in myself that I can ask those types of salaries going forward as well. And so I said, all right, before I joined AirMeet, I actually was contemplating, do I want to just like go full-time creator, like focus on content creation, focus on brand partnerships, focus on my podcast, and like actually being able to devote a ton of time there, and work with like different sponsors. Like Google sponsors the podcast now, and like a bunch of other companies, and it's really successful. I just have never had enough time because of that, you gotta work the job and like do everything like that first. But like, there was so many passion projects that I had that I just wanted to do, and I was like, I could do that, or I could go talk to a company. And luckily, because of the reputation that I had, I could ask a company to create a role for me. Most of the roles that I wanted to do would not be, hey, you could just go apply for this. I wanted to do like evangelism or content creation, where it was like, you were the face of the brand, going out, speaking to customers, events, all those things. And those just aren't readily available roles. So I was kind of weighing both options, but I said, why kind of go and work for a company again? What's to say 3-4 months down the road this doesn't happen again? Who knows when this economy is going to get any better? I mean, hopefully we've reached the bottom point. We're going to start to come back up now, but it's rough, especially in martech and sales tech. And I said, you know what, I'm going to put, I know it's a tough time, especially with new babies, but I said, I'm going to put myself first, and I'm going to test this out. And worst comes to worst, I can always go find another job down the road.
Uh, Deena, I know you have a lot of thoughts about that because we've talked a lot about the risks
Mm-hmm.
of, going out on your own. And by the way, going out on your own is not for everybody. It is not for the faint of heart. I'm just going to say that out there to you, everyone listening today. Is not for the faint of heart. But you have a lot of opinions too on the risk of staying with the company versus, or with the corporate structure versus kind of taking it into your own hands.
Yeah, I think the tale here is that like there is not a lot of safe space in the career space. If you stay with a company, as you said, Nick, like anyone can be on the block, even if you have, contributed millions to the pipeline. So that, that's not the safe space that it used to be. If you were a great worker and drove results, that you would come out on top. Not necessarily so. And then going out on your own, I mean, very risky as well. It can be feast or famine. And moving from the steady drumbeat of a regular paycheck out to being a solo practitioner is a risky move. What I was going to say is I saw the immediate parallel there as well, Nick, with you and your twins and making the decision to step out on your own. And fun fact, Liz was very far along in a pregnancy when she stepped out into to create Captivate with me. So I see some some similar traits with you two in terms of being very smart, but also being calculated risk takers.
Well, so
Yeah,
this, oh,
I was just
sorry,
gonna
Nick.
say, it was, I was talking to my mom this past weekend, and so she's worked at Raytheon her entire life. I mean, she's been there like 40 something years. Her only job, and she's like, "You're only 36, and you've worked for like 8 companies." And I was like, "Yeah, mom." I was like, "Times have changed, though." I was like, "No one stays like if you stay at a job longer than 4 years, you're looked at like a weirdo in today's world." And like, I would never be able to get 10 to 20% jumps in salary if I didn't move. Now, yeah, I've gone through acquisitions, I've gone through an IPO, I've gone through companies running out of runway. So like I've seen it all, and like some of those have been out of my control as well. But I said, why am I gonna go make money for someone else when I've worked so hard over the last 3.5 years to build this and start to like put it into my own hands. Yeah, it's definitely a risky move, but I feel like I've put enough effort in over the last 3.5 years that I built the foundation. It was just when was the time to make this move? And sometimes you just get pushed into this earlier than you think as well.
Well, okay, so let's just like be really honest here then, because the talk is like why we suck at advocating for ourselves. But Nick, I mean, you had really good numbers behind you. Like you said, like 2 times in a row, there were some good stats. I'm guessing your company knew about that performance. So maybe there's people listening in today and they're like, well, so does it just not matter if you advocate for yourself at the end of the day? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's important to showcase the results that you do, because even if your leadership doesn't take that into consideration, there's additional people that are watching outside of your leadership that you can
Mhm.
showcase those things to, and that are going to help you get into your next role. Maybe you're in demand gen or customer marketing. Especially, I was talking to a customer marketer yesterday who unfortunately lost her job, and she has an amazing track record. And it's just so interesting that like even these roles are being cut in the economy. And I was like, listen, you have the stats to back it up. Don't be afraid. You're gonna find a job in like a weeks. Once you put this out there that like you've been laid off, I guarantee you you'll have a job within a week because of like the track record you have. And again, it's like kind of talking these people off a ledge to a certain degree, because if you've never gone through this before, and when I had to lay off my entire team at AirMeet, a lot of them haven't been through this before. They're like, what am I going to do? I'm freaking out. Like, I've never been through this. I was like, just decompress. Know that it isn't your fault. This is just what happens in today's tech world, and that you have to put yourself out there and advocate for yourself, because no one else is going to. These companies are going to benefit themselves. They're not going to care about the employees. I mean, yeah, they care about the employees, but ultimately they care about the bottom line. So you have to advocate for yourself, because no one else is going to, if you want to be successful in today's world, and especially with how many people are applying for jobs today because of how many people lost jobs. You have to stand out some way. And if you send your resume into a black hole, you're more than likely not going to get a call back. But if you have the results, and if you can showcase those results, if you use video to showcase why those matter to a company's bottom line, I guarantee you are going to at least get a shot to tell your story.
Hmm. I love that. We've just been doing CAP award submissions. So I've looked at a lot of award submissions. There's a lot of parallels there. If your award submission is just kind of fill out the typical format and there isn't a lot of more intense storytelling, it really can get lost in the shuffle. And anything that can make that application stand out really brings it to life. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. When it's a tough market and there's a lot of competition, you have to find a way to stand out. So there's two paths I want to take here now, Nick. So there's the practical tips for standing out for people. And, you're a natural creator. A lot of people out there may not be natural creators. So, like, what can they do when that's not really something they've done before? What's the easy access there? And then, secondly, the point is you have to advocate for yourself. Well, you laid a foundation into to some degree for advocating for yourself. Like you said, your friend who you mentioned, you had been advocating for yourself even externally outside the organization. What are some tips for advocating or building that even external facing advocacy for yourself without it becoming like I'm doing this all to just protect myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's some good stuff there. So like, I would say if you're, afraid of imposter syndrome when you're putting your thoughts out there, and I think, the easiest way to advocate for yourself is through creating content around the projects that you're working on so that you can showcase the results, showcase how your mind works. Because when hiring managers, I know when I always hired people, the first thing that I would always do is go check their LinkedIn profile. Do they create content? I didn't even look at their resume. I went and saw, do they create content? If so, what do they talk about? Can I tell like how excited they are when they're expressing it? Can I see how their mind works on like how they're solving problems? And I would actually take that over personally, like looking at a resume, because I think, lots of people lie on resumes, and just, I haven't used a resume in like 4 years. I just think there's better ways to do it personally. I know that doesn't work for every industry either. But I think you have to be okay with putting your thoughts out there. And if you're not okay with putting your thoughts out there because of imposter syndrome, just know that everyone deals with it. Even C-level executives, all the way down to the bottom of the totem pole. Like, people always are afraid of like, what are other people going to think? If you don't want to put your thoughts out there, don't be afraid to network. Go join communities. Go join with like-minded individuals that maybe you want to like pick their brain or do a coffee talk or something like that. Because what you'll do is you'll start to create kind of like a personal cabinet of advisors, of people that maybe aren't like mentors per se, but you have these people that you build really strong relationships with that you can start to bounce ideas off of. And I think that was always important to me. I had a group of like 10 people, and like I would always bounce different types of ideas if it was around a job or something like that, and they were really impactful for the longer piece of my career. So again, if you don't want to create content, totally okay. I think engaging with others is important. I think networking is important. I think, joining these communities that are out there is important if you want to level up yourself both personally and professionally. So I think that piece there. And then what was the second piece?
It was, yeah, how to lay a foundation of advocating for yourself without looking like, hey, I'm trying to build my profile.
But I think it is important to build your profile, because again, like, these companies can lay off anyone at any time. And so lots of people like, well, if I'm like, putting my own thoughts out there, what if my company doesn't agree with it? I talked to someone the other day that was like, I've been putting out content that has nothing to do with my company, and they're actually a bit angry with me. They're asking me to stop. And I said, well, why should you stop it? It's something that you're passionate about. Like, you should be able to showcase that. It's not like you're doing it on work time. And even if so, like, who cares? Because the amount of people that are clicking your profile because they found your content interesting are going to find out about the company that you work for anyway. So it's a win-win for them. And for these companies that don't want to invest in the individuals to go out and build their brands or whatever, because, oh, they might leave. Yeah, that's going to happen. But what's going to happen is you're going to have so many people apply to those roles because they heard about your company through this individual's content, that you're going to have the backfill easily there. And then these people can kind of go out and spread their wings to other companies and kind of go and do their thing. I don't think companies should be afraid of empowering their employees to create content and build their brand.
Question here, Nick, with all of that in mind. I came across an article yesterday, maybe on LinkedIn. Maybe you shared it, I don't know. Where the headline was something about Cisco was investing in training their 84,000 employees to
That was
become
Chris Walker
Chris
who
Walker.
shared that.
So
Yeah,
training their
yeah, I saw a few.
84,000 employees to become LinkedIn influencers. So with the advent of AI, and I just said to Liz this morning, I'm one of the lucky people on LinkedIn who went to do a post. It was, here, let AI write the post for you. I was like, oh, geez, thanks, LinkedIn. Um, enter a few sentences and we'll basically make it better. Okay, great, thanks, LinkedIn. But with all of this in mind, with AI, with this proliferation of kind of easier content, with companies training 84,000 people to be LinkedIn influencers, what's the X factor going to be? If many people, not all, but many people are jumping on board with the idea of creating a brand and putting themselves out there, and to bring it back to our conversation, advocating for themselves through channels like LinkedIn, what is the X factor to break through that noise and be noticed? And maybe you can pull on your own experience because I know not everyone who gets laid off is having 300 DMs flood their inbox with offers of help, or having
Yeah, yeah.
500,000 impressions on their layoff posts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about. I when when I started 3.5 years ago, only 1% of users on LinkedIn created content, and at the time there was like 650 million users. I read a stat that at the end of 2022, 4% of users create content on LinkedIn, and it was up to about 980 million. So almost a billion users on LinkedIn. Now think about that, like 4% of 980 million. It's a lot of noise. How do you stand out? And I think you have to have a unique point of view, story, messaging. And I think for me, the best content that I see is when people actually talk about the projects that they work on. Like not just, the sky is blue or whatever. Like it's the post that like, hey, I worked on this, social media campaign, or I worked on this paid media campaign, like here were the results, or I worked on like this customer testimonial or something like this, and this is how it came out to be. Like those are the best types of content because you're delivering a huge amount of value to individuals that maybe, they're lurkers, they're probably not going to engage with you, but they're reading it and you don't know how much that's actually helping them within their own organization. And what's going to happen is down the road, they're going to DM you and they're going to say, hey, we've never talked. I've been reading your content for a few years now, and I can't tell you how much it means to me and how much it's helped me, both internally and externally within the company I've worked for. And like that is like, for me, like that's the game changer because it's not like likes or comments or anything like that. It's the DMs from people that are lurking that will never like your stuff, but they'll DM you and tell you how much it means to them. Like that's like, hey, I've always said if I could help one person a day, then like it's perfect. I'm not looking to move mountains or anything like that. I'm not looking to be like the Justin Welches out there. But I'm looking to help people on like what I care about. And like I started talking about field marketing when no one else was talking about field marketing 3.5 years ago. Like that was kind of what I was known as, like the field marketing guy. And like the misconceptions it brought to a revenue organization. And it took me a year before I saw any traction. Literally, it was crickets for a while. And I was just like, is anyone actually listening? And I started getting DMs of people that were like, hey, this is really helpful. And it allowed me to talk about ABM. And then I moved into a customer marketing role and like this whole creator economy now. And like, it's allowed me to build an audience of people that follow me for me, regardless of what I talk about. And I think that's what you ultimately get to. But you can't just jump in and talk about random stuffs if you haven't really been posting before. And posting is just one piece of it. You have to engage with others. You have to like find, say, 10 to 15 other like-minded individuals and go comment on their stuff every single day. Not just like an I agree or an emoji. Like add something of value, because what's going to happen is you're going to build that organic base back to your own page before you start to create any of your own content.
Yeah, this is so interesting, right? And I think a lot of people are jumping. I mean, a lot of people are seeing that value, right, Nick? Like we've seen even in this space, customer marketing advocacy space, like a lot more people trying to build their own professional profiles that coexist with their company's professional profile, right? There's a lot of that going on right now. What about like if you're not one of, like we said, like you, are there any other practical steps that you think people can take internal to their organization to really advocate for themselves, before those layoffs happen? What else, besides being externally facing and building all this external brand and value internally, what should they be doing?
I think it's really becoming like an evangelist for the brand, and I think it's like being able to take it on and like put your own spin on it through the projects that you do, if that's interesting to you for sure. But I think it's communication on top of that, and like making sure people know what you're working on. Like something that I always did was we called it like a Monday marketing minute that went out to the entire company, and it was like, hey, here's what marketing's impact was this past week, and it showed the themes and the offers and the campaigns we were working on so that everyone could see it, from like the executives in the company all the way down to the interns, and like everyone would be able to have input on like what information went in there, or like what they could actually do with it, how do they action that. And that was just like some of the easier projects that we were able to like take on to get additional visibility internally, to be like, hey, like look, this is amazing things that like our teams are working on the marketing team. And we're trying to advocate on like, well, I mean, especially because marketing budgets have been cut like crazy. It's like, we need more money if you want us to drive more. And if marketing's driving 80% of pipeline, like, why are you not giving us more money? We have the data and the results to back it up. And we're going to continue to showcase that so that you can give us more money when the time is right.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that X factor that you're talking about, Deena, right? Because there is a lot of noise, and it's going to get noisier, and definitely with AI, it's going to get way noisier. And we've had discussions on like, okay, well, when everyone's writing a well formatted and well thought out post, because AI is actually helping them write that well formatted and well thought out post, what will you be able to do to stand out? And of course, there's always video, and we don't do enough video. We talk about it, but not many of us love to be on video. But there's also, I think, this X factor being this authenticity piece. When you are literally very interested in a topic, or if you're very passionate about a topic and you truly do care, like Nick, you really did care about certain things and you were putting things out there just to help, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there is that fine line between people, and this is what I meant by profile building. It's like, yeah, we do want to build our profiles, and it is in our best interest to build our profiles. We also don't want to do things just to benefit ourselves, because in a sense, that is not how we're going to most authentically show up. And that is not going to be the most attractive way for people to engage with this, because people inherently can sense some of that or see that. So I feel like, everyone always says this, like, talk about what you're passionate about, and to some degree, I'll even say, like, even if it's not your absolute day job, if there is something you really are passionate about and that you can add value to the conversation, maybe post about that today. but what do you think about that? Like, is that the X factor, is when that point of authenticity, because we're going to be flooded here pretty soon with a lot of semi-authentic content.
Yeah, I think AI is gonna ruin LinkedIn. I'm actually like nervous for like what that's gonna look like, because I'm already getting like every post I post, I get about 9 to 10 comments that are written by ChatGPT, and it's very easy to spot out. And like,
Oh.
it's really annoying because all it does is repeat back what I said in the post. And again, very easy to spot out. Like, and I think that's another whole piece. But like, when people start to create this content, it's not going to be, even what they're really passionate about. Like for me, I add a personal component to it because I think that gets people to know like who I am. Like, people always say LinkedIn is such a professional platform, but if you bring the personal aspect, people get to know who you authentically are. And it's like, if I can't bring my entire self onto a platform, then I don't want to be there anyways. Like, I'm not the type of person that just talks about all business. Like, I want people to know what I stand for as an individual, that I love playing sports, that I have a family, and like all these different things. And like, all of this makes up who I am as an individual, and makes up like what I actually believe in. Yeah, like there's the component of like what I create from a professional standpoint, but all of it adds up into who I am, and I think what makes me stand out from like an authentic standpoint.
Yeah, there's this kind of invisible fine line between advocating for yourself, authentically putting yourself and your real expertise out there, and cringy self-promoter. And I don't know what the tipping point is, but I think like that's a little bit of what Liz is talking about there, that like you can kind of see sometimes, you just kind of get the sense that like, oh, this is motivated by something that maybe isn't quite as genuine. And yeah, I think we are going to see more of it. I was really surprised by this LinkedIn let me write your post thing. If anyone's interested in what that post looked like, it's a post that I wrote last night about this Talk Advocacy to Me session. I mean, it is a useful tool for people who are busy. I get it, to just the facts, but the misuse, Nick, as you said, like when you said, oh, you look for people's content on LinkedIn before you would look at their resume, the pendulum might have to swing back. We might have to look at actual track records of expertise and experience before we look at the content, because the content now can, of course, be manufactured. This is such a good chat. We could talk about this for another half an hour, and I'm really glad that we had the opportunity. Finally, Nick, I mean, you're kind of a big deal. in the space finally to sit down with you and have this conversation.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
excited.
And I think that, you know, actually, Deena just said something that I think could summarize this whole talk. And I think it's exactly what you're saying, Nick, is like a track record of expertise, a track record of engagement, not just, hey, here's my resume and here's everything I did, but there is no actual track record there. Whereas LinkedIn and other social platforms, or even networking events, speaking, whatever, you can create a track record, whether that exists online to be called up, or if that exists in people's minds because they've seen you and talked to you so many times. But maybe that is the summary of this, is we suck at advocating because we don't take the time to create a track record of our experiences, of our work, like you said, of our projects, how we've interacted with clients, and I don't know. I think that is actually summarizing what you're saying.
100%. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's, it's so interesting. I go to a lot of like shows, like trade shows and stuff, and it's like people will be like, I feel like I've known you because I've like interacted with you on LinkedIn for so long. It's like we have these conversations that feel like we didn't just meet, but like we've been knowing each other for years. We just kind of like pick up that conversation and keep going.
Mm. This is amazing. Thank you, Nick. I mean, and you just said something that just, it's like the X factor is going to be like actual relationship. And we always come back to again and again and again, actual relationship, which is what customer marketing and advocacy is. So if we would just practice what we preach a bit more, but then also take the time to be a little bit more intentional about creating that track record mixed with that relational element, that is a great recipe for being better at advocating for ourselves. And hopefully we won't suck at it forever. Be like Nick. Don't suck at advocating for yourself. And follow Nick if you're not following Nick already, because he puts out fantastic content very consistently. Consistency is probably another thing we could have talked about in there. And so make sure you follow him and his new podcast. And we look forward to hearing a whole lot more about your new endeavors with Club PF too, Nick.
Thank you so much. This was a ton of fun.
Okay.
Absolutely. So we'll put some links in the show notes later in the podcast for some of your stuff, Nick. So if you're tuning in, we will get that out there as well. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you, Nick, for coming to be our special guest.
Thank you.
Bye.